Well, hey, it's Chris Mueller with your best year ever. Really looking forward to the best year ever business planning session that's coming up on November 16th. We're doing a series of podcasts kind of leading up to that. And today, I just thought it would be really appropriate to talk about your best year ever and what it means to get up and get the best start possible on the day. Because we just had that strange ritual we always go through, the time change, where we go to, I believe we're in daylight savings or we just left daylight savings. I can never keep track. I know it's just fall back and spring forward and that sort of thing. I have to tell you, this is one of the most challenging things for me personally in my getting up and getting a start on the day. It is our collective jet lag that we do to ourselves of every couple of months here to, for some reason, spring forward or fall back, and we just sprang forward, or no, we just fell back. And it just drives me nuts. I feel like it is so disruptive to my morning routine. And it's got me thinking about how can I and how can you have the best day ever, every single day, and start that when you wake up in the morning. Now, I am not what you would classically call a morning person, and I never have been. It is getting up has always been a challenge for me personally. It's just not my chronotype. And if you didn't know that, different people have different chronotypes. There are literally morning people, and there are night people, and then there are people who are kind of somewhere in between. I am more of an evening person. I tend to come alive at about 4 o'clock p.m. and would really stay and power through, except for the schedule that we're sort of chained to in the West here. My wife, on the other hand, is a morning person. She springs out of bed at the alarm and immediately jumps into productivity. She's doing things around the house. She's getting things done. And man, I just don't work that way. And you could say, is it nature or is it nurture? Is it just, I'll tell you what, I've got 6 kids, and you heard that right. I have 6 children. It's a lot of kids. And I've gotten to kind of see this in a case-by-case study. And I'm just going to tell you, some people come out different than other people. My 6-year-old right now is not a morning person. There's nothing you can do to change that about him. He's just a late riser. He's a little bear, right? He just wants to hibernate. Whereas my 11-year-old, when that kid pops out of bed right at, sometimes before the alarm, gets dressed, and he'll tell you it's because I want to have more free time in the morning. Whereas for me, my 6-year-old, if I had more free time in the morning, I would use it to sleep, right? And you may be like me. So how do we have the best day ever? How do we start our days, whether you're a morning person or you're a night person? How do you start your day in a way that you feel like I'm ready to get things done? I'm motivated to have an incredible day, to be productive, to focus on my one thing. I want to get that done. And so this is going to kind of be a duh, but you can't get up in the morning if you didn't go to sleep. If you didn't consciously plan out getting to sleep the night before, you're not going to get up in the morning the next day. And this is a conversation I have with my college student all the time. Listen, man, if you want to get up for class, you've got to go to sleep the night before. And he tells me, oh, no, I don't need that much sleep. Guess what? As human beings, we do. We need literally just about a minimum of 8 hours of sleep. And when you're developing, you need even more, right? 7 on the very least. But for the vast majority of us, it's going to be 8 or more hours of sleep. So just back engineer that now. What time do you want to get up? Well, if you want to get up at 6 a.m., then you have to be asleep by 10 a.m. Now, I didn't say go to bed at 10 a.m. I said be asleep by 10 a.m. because it takes a little time to fall asleep. So if you're having a rough time getting started, well, how are you preparing to sleep on the other side? Just mapping out the time. So if I want to be up and out of bed with the alarm, feeling rested and good at 6 a.m., I should probably be getting in bed about 9:30, right? About 9:30 p.m. to let myself just transition from awake to sleep in the most natural way possible. There's some other things that we can do to allow ourselves to be ready for sleep. And these are just some neat things. And it really makes sense when you think about human beings as a species, right? We've only lived in cities or houses for a very short period of time in our lifespan as creatures on this planet. We've only had air conditioning for an even shorter period of time as creatures on this planet. And quite frankly, our bodies are not adapted to it. And so there are some physical cues that just naturally happen in the world that kick off a whole series of things in your body. One of those is the production of melatonin that we don't have anymore because we live in an environment that is completely foreign to human existence. I'll give you a couple examples. Your home is probably temperature regulated. It's set at a pretty standard temperature all the time, and that might be 75 degrees constant, right? That just doesn't exist in nature. There's no place in the world where you're going to have a 75-degree constant. There's going to be some variation in the temperature because the sun rises and then the sun sets. Guess what? We are not nocturnal creatures. We're diurnal creatures, meaning we stay up during the day. And so the cues for our body to fall asleep are the things that happen when the sun begins to set. The light begins to dim, right? It stops being that bright blue light of the day and it starts being the kind of warm, orangey glow of the afternoon, that golden hour we talk about in photography. That's a cue to your body to start producing the melatonin, to start producing the things that are going to allow you to relax into very good, nutritive sleep, right? In our current homes, we don't have that. The lights just stay up all the time. And if you're struggling to get up in the morning, it might be because you're struggling to go to sleep. So can you hack your environment to allow you to get to sleep better? So one of the things I've done in my home is I've got light bulbs that can adjust their warmth depending on the time of day, and I can program to do that. So when I'm going to bed, they are a warm amber color. Typically about an hour before bedtime, I drop them to 50% brightness because guess what? That's plenty bright at night, right? In the morning when they go off, boom, they are bright blue and they're up at 100%. These were pretty affordable light bulbs I bought at Costco. This is not like really expensive equipment. They're just some things I thought, okay, I want to get better sleep. How can I do that? So lighting is one thing. Are you going to bed with the lights just blazing in your whole house and then you lay down to rest and your body hasn't had any transition time to do what it naturally, evolutionarily wants to do? Well, then you might consider making some adjustments. I did an experiment over the summer this way with my kids where I spent a couple days and I said, we're going to be just primitive. We're going to have no electrical lighting. My wife, not a huge fan of this, but my young boys, they thought it was the coolest thing ever. I did this because one of my sons, my 6-year-old, seems really photosensitive. He seems really sensitive to the light. And I wanted him to get better sleep because there's links between sleep quality and attention deficit or disorder and all of these things. And so I just did these primitive days where we had no lighting. We just allowed the home to get dark the way it naturally would. If you've ever been camping or backpacking, you know this. When the light just gets naturally dimmer, man, you get tired. I don't know what it is, but it's like someone shoots me with a sedative. When I'm camping, I am ready to go to sleep at like 8 o'clock. Boom, lights out. And it worked like a charm on our primitive days. So can you hack your sleeping situation? In your home, could you go ahead and just bring the lights down? Put in a dimmer switch on some of those and make a big difference. Identify which bulbs you have or that are those daylight settings and maybe just replace them with something of a more amber tone, a little more warm, kind of like that golden hour sunlight that we talk about. The other thing is when it is time to sleep, again, as human beings, we had no external light source from the sun and the moon for most of our history. Now we've got televisions, now we've got phones, now we've got all kinds of light disruptors in our sleeping environment. What could you do to remove those? I'll give you an example. My alarm clock, actually, I can dim the display on that so that it's not glaring at me as I'm trying to fall asleep. My cell phone, they've actually done studies on cell phones. Just take out the light from it for a second. They did a study where they put a ceramic brick on the bedside table next to people trying to sleep in the shape of their iPhone. So it looked like an iPhone, but they knew it wasn't an iPhone. They knew that it was just a brick that looked like an iPhone. And what they found was the people who had the brick on their bedside table as opposed to the people who didn't have anything on their bedside table, the people with nothing had a much greater sleep quality than the people who had a pretend iPhone. What does that mean? It means we're primed to try to interact with this thing. Now let's go back to the lighting part of it. What does this phone do? Well, it emits a very bright LED blue light in my eyes, and that has been scientifically proven to drop your melatonin production. Melatonin, one of the things that your body produces to help you relax, it drops that melatonin production so that, again, you're not ready for sleep. If you, like me, have a habit of watching your big screen television every night before you go to bed, you are disrupting your body's natural ability to produce melatonin and thus get you into good sleep. So if you find that you're waking up tired every morning, adjust the lights, get rid of the cell phone in the room, and maybe take that TV out as well and see what the effect is on your sleep on the next morning. Now, there are some other things we can do in the way of our environment to help us and to help us get into natural sleep. We talked about light. The next one is temperature. Right? I mentioned the idea of a temperature-controlled room is very new in terms of human development, and our bodies haven't caught up with it yet. And so, again, primitive man would be not even that primitive. Go back to just the turn of the century, to the old West, right? We didn't have an air conditioner. And so what would happen is at nighttime, it would get colder. And you might have a wood stove in the cabin, but it probably wouldn't keep it toasty all the time. It would drop down. And what they found is that the optimal temperature for you to sleep at is about 68 degrees. Now, I live in Southern California. My home has never been 68 degrees unless it was just really cold outside. In the summertime, it's just not going to happen. Well, there's good news then. What your body really needs is a change in temperature. It needs the temperature to drop. And so if you can get a drop in temperature in the evening hours, then that's going to signal your body again, along with the light, hey, it's time to go to sleep. I'm not a creature that stays up all night. Time to start getting drowsy, right? So I want to ask you, are you keeping the temperature in your home constant? Or have you set it so that maybe in the daytime it's a little warmer in the home and in the evening it gets a little bit cooler? So what I did is I installed an Ecobee smart thermostat in my home. And what it does is every night around bedtime, it drops the temperature to 73 degrees. Because again, I live in Southern California. And if I was going to go down to 68 degrees in the spring, in the summer, and the fall, I would go bankrupt. And so we keep it a little warmer during the day. In the evening, we drop it to 73 upstairs. And that helps everybody go to sleep. Now, good news is we're getting into the winter months. It actually continues to drop now. So when we wake up, it's usually about 69, 68 degrees, which is what you want for optimal sleep. But hey, as we move from the getting ready to sleep to the actual sleep, there's some other things we can do with temperature to help us out as well. We'll talk about that in just a second. The other thing I want you to think about in preparing for the next day is, how are you letting go of all of the stresses, all of the things from the previous day? You know, I was just part of a fascinating conversation with some real estate brokers from around the country. These are some of the top 500 real estate brokers in the country. And the question came up of, what do you think about when you fall asleep? Very interesting question. And what was fascinating was these high achieving brokers, owning multiple brokerages, you know, some of the, like I said, some of the top in the country, how many of them had a ritual of sorts to clear the desk, so to speak, right? Whether that was prayer, to just accept that there's a greater power and I'm going to allow him to take this, or it was just I've checked off all the list of things I need to do, but they had a ritual for it. I personally have a little thing I do where I kind of allow my brain to just be free at night, where I have a kind of a ritual I go through to fall asleep, where I allow my brain just to go on a journey, right? And it's a way I can consciously say I'm leaving this state and moving into the next one. What is your ritual for transitioning your mind, your awareness away from all of the anxieties of life to just relax and accept this time of rest, right? There's a lot of different ways to do it. My dad, for instance, he used to have an elevator. He would go down and he would count backwards on the elevator as it was going down the floors, and he never got to the bottom, he said, right? That was his routine. What is yours, right? The other thing is, if you want to have a very productive day the next day, for instance, maybe you want to get up and you want to go to the gym the next morning. Well, one of the best things you can do the night before is before is have the plan prepared and laid out so that when you wake up, there's no hemming and hawing. It's, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to do this workout, my clothes are right here, and I've taken all of the obstacles out of my way. I've got a plan for that. Or I'm going to get up and I'm going to do this, this, and this. I've got a plan for that. And I've internalized that plan, right? It's not external to me, it's internal to me. It's not something I'm subjecting on myself. It's something that I'm just accepting. All right. Now let's get to the morning, because we spend a lot of time in prepping. And honestly, we could spend more time. There are just so many things that you can do the night before to allow yourself to fall into sleep, like reading. Reading is one of those great ones because it just transitions. It's kind of foreign to what we do as moderns, right? Reading a paper book. Journaling is another great way you can kind of ritual into that. All these kind of. But let's talk about waking up, because that's really, for me, where the difficulty comes, and has always come. It's in the getting out of bed. Now, I mentioned light before. And this is one of the hacks that I love and I utilize in my home. Again, I have the lighting help me prepare for sleep, but I also have the lighting help me prepare to wake. Because again, as creatures, how did we know to get up in the morning? Well, the sun comes up. That's a very, very obvious cue that the day is getting ready to start. And so those light bulbs I mentioned earlier, I've got them programmed to start warming up about 15 minutes before I want to wake up in the morning. The room gets gradually brighter so that when the alarm goes off, I'm normally pretty awake at that point, if not totally awake. I also have an alarm clock that's specifically designed this way. It's a wake light, and then it brightens up as it's getting ready to go off so that it's a natural wake up. It's not jarring. It's not that awful sort of someone shook you feeling of waking up. It's just a gradual thing. One of the other things I've done to sort of hack my environment is we set the temperature to go down to X at night, and in the morning, I've done the same thing leading up to time to wake up. It'll raise the temperature to 70 degrees. Now in the winter, it's usually lower than that. In the summer, just nothing to do than California, but it'll raise it from the 68, the 65, whatever it dropped down to 70 degrees. And again, it's another cue to my body, hey, time to start producing those wake up chemicals because we got to get going. We got things to do today. Right? I mentioned having everything set up for you. So those are some of the things I do to get up. Some of the other things that I think are really powerful in waking up in the morning is, again, the intention, right? It's the night before work, but it's I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and I'm going to do X, right? I've got that intention for myself. Maybe you've had this experience. I fly quite a bit for my speaking, and I'm always nervous about getting home when I'm in a foreign place. And so I just am a little bit concerned about the alarm clock. And so I'm very, very conscious of I need to get up at this time. I need to get up at this time. I need to get up at this time. And guess what? When I'm on the road, I have no problem getting up at that time. In fact, I normally just wake up at that time before the alarm clock because I've so firmly implanted that intention into myself. The same thing waking up at your home. I need to get up at this time. I need to get up at this time. I need to get up at this time. We talked about light. We've talked about sound. All right, and here's one I'm going to just say is important for waking up. Don't hit the snooze. Oh man, I have a love-hate relationship with the snooze. I'll be honest. I will tap that sucker and it's the worst. If you are trying to get up and have a productive day, the snooze is your enemy. Why is it the enemy? Okay, well, let's just break it down. Do you actually get quality sleep after you hit the snooze button? No, right? What we normally get is very kind of sort of half sleep. It's that groggy sleep. It's the kind of sleep that it's not nutritive, let's say. It's not restorative. It just makes you feel bleh, right? It's the opposite of starting the day with intention. It's sort of just almost like a corruption of your ability to get moving, right? It's kind of like junk food, right? It feels like I'm getting something good. I'm getting those extra 10 minutes, but I'm not really getting anything of substance. So instead of making me feel good for the rest of the day, it kind of just sucks my energy out of me. And just like junk food makes me feel like I'm getting something good, but really it doesn't give me anything of substance. The snooze button is like that too. And so if you want to get up and have a good day, you've got to, we got to fall out of that habit of hitting the snooze, of hitting the snooze, of hitting the snooze. Now, we've talked about light, we've talked about sound, we've talked about avoiding the snooze. I'm just going to say, if you are like me, that might not be enough all the time. And so what are some of the other things that we can do? And this is where it gets into the land of creative and kind of silly. I don't know if you've seen these alarm clocks online that actually will run away from you. I don't have one. I've always thought it'd be kind of a cool thing. But the alarm goes off and then it rolls off the table and it starts running around the room and you have to chase it to wake it up. I'm pretty sure that would work for me. I don't know. I mean, I feel like that would do it. For a while, I used an alarm clock on my iPhone that made you do math. So you'd go over to do it and it would give you an equation and you'd have to do the equation in order for the alarm to stop going off. That one, I honestly, it did wake me up, but I was angry and I didn't like the way I felt when I was done. So I'm going to say that might not be for everybody, but if you like math, a little bit of challenge in the morning, there's a lot of variations on that you can find with your iPhone. Another one that I found that was somewhat effective, but not great, was you'd pick up your iPhone, the alarm would go off, you pick it up and you'd have to spin around in a circle to do it, and I would just spin around in a circle and fall right back in bed. So that didn't help me very much either. I'm trying to think what other alarms, there's just a lot of those out there. I know that you can get a shaker for your bed. So it shakes your bed, right? It's a very physical kind of thing. That wakes people up too. But again, what I'm just gonna say is all of these sort of novelty fixes, whether it's the running alarm clock, whether it's the math equation or the shakes your bed, if you're not getting ready for sleep well, or if you're a determined sleeper, we can normally ignore those things, right? I'm just speaking honestly. And so what happens, or what I'm going to suggest is do all of the things to prepare for, I forgot one of the prepare for sleep things. Fluids, man. Try to drink the bulk of your water before 4 p.m. That's actually a scientific fact. Your body processes fluids better before 4 p.m. than it does after, right? And so if you want to get a full night's sleep, don't go to sleep with a full bladder. Kind of drink the bulk of your fluid, about 2 liters before 4 p.m., and then just kind of a little bit in the evening time. If you want to get up and get productive in the morning so you can have that great day and you've been struggling to do it, try hacking your light, try hacking your temperature, try hacking your intention, right? And do not, at all costs, hit that snooze button. It will hurt more than it will help. Well, hey, I hope that this has been helpful to you guys as you're trying to have that best year ever. If you have not signed up for the best year ever business planning session on November 16th, go ahead and do that. The Eventbrite link will be in the notes. Other than that, guys, we'll catch you next time. Here's to your best year ever.